Hello everyone and welcome to Roll Neck Weekly, a podcast and YouTube show brought to you by oddschecker in association with Bet365. I really mean Racing Weekly, but as you see from the gentleman alongside me and of course yours truly, none of us got the memo about what we ought to be wearing. There was no conversation before we arrived here in West London to decide what we all ought to look like. Sam Turner should know better because he's here every week. We'll forgive Steve Ryder.
Yeah.
Steve, you've played many different roles on here. You've been the pundit, you've been presenter as well. But I'd give you best turned out of the field today.
Thank you very much. At least we actually all came in different colours.
Yes.
It would have been a little bit worse if we all came in
the world's worst boy band. Absolutely. Nailed it.
Well, at least a couple of us are middle-aged.
Well, you're paid the big bucks though, isn't it? Roll Neck Weekly. Genius.
Just made it up as well, so tremendous. I feel proud of myself. Very briefly, like the racing over the last week,
yes.
It's not been an easy situation for obviously the race courses, for people at home getting horses ready, etc. Steve, just a brief reflection on a summary of the last 7 days in horse racing.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a bit unfortunate, to be honest, isn't it, really? You can forgive courses who have made the full effort to get everything to go ahead. It was a little bit disappointing with Newcastle, obviously the kind of fiasco around that, the fact that they only started working in the morning. It's not like it was a Tuesday night meeting, it was a Saturday afternoon live on ITV Racing. That was a little bit disappointing. It's understandable for trainers and jockeys and owners to be disappointed with that, if I'm honest.
Yeah, there were a couple of unsatisfactory situations over the weekend.
Yeah.
What was your take on everything, Sam?
Where do we start? We've swept the football under the carpet, haven't we?
What football?
What football, yeah. Okay, that's good news. Yeah, I thought some of the language coming out of Newcastle was a bit disturbing, that, course executive and people perhaps to do with the course felt that it was raceable or left it hanging in the air, that they felt that it was raceable, whereas all the practitioners certainly felt it was no way they're going to race, as was the case again on Sunday, unfortunately, and puts into question, how do we term all-weather racing, synthetic racing, whatever it might be. But so that was a little bit disappointing. Racing obviously not on the same page there. Lack of communication again, which is a bit of an issue. Most notably for everybody who's struggled to get out of yards and get to Newcastle and then find out that there's no way that they're ever going to race 2 inches under the surface is rock hard. So that was disappointing. I thought Cheltenham did everything that they could. You couldn't label any of their efforts, not worthwhile. They were right to race on the Friday. You can't be. I can understand people wanting to look after the ground if it's really desperate and they don't want to chew the track up if you've got a 2-day fixture. But when it was a fixture that we had on Friday and Saturday, or a scenario that we had on Friday and Saturday where you just had to get some racing on if you could get some racing on. There was no guarantee that Saturday's card was going to go ahead. Then you had to do that, and it was disappointing. It would have been nice if we could have saved 1 or 2 of the races, most notably the International. Would have been good to carry that forward because, the contenders has gone, as we know from Nicky Henderson, who mentions his every given opportunity.
Well, he's the only one who had runners in it.
Yeah, there aren't many opportunities, are there? And you've got the Christmas hurdle coming up, and you can go to Ireland, I suppose, as well if you want to. Though I'm not sure you'd want to particularly go and take on Stateman, Vauban, Ital. But
not sure they'd want Constitution Hill coming over, would they?
Well, he's. I don't think Epperton's in either. I'm surprised that she didn't get an entry actually in the Matheson because, with JP and the connections, it would have seemed a sensible route for her. But yeah. Again, we're talking about a rather disappointing time in racing, aren't we? But in fairness, I've got certain sympathy with some of the tracks.
It's not all doom and gloom. We have had, because of obviously the opportunity, because there hasn't been that much good racing over the last week, we do have an opportunity to have a look back at an overall view of the season so far. Sam and Steve have picked out 3 performances that have really struck a chord with them for the season still to come. We'll also be looking ahead to Ascot this weekend. Fingers crossed that meeting's on in some form or another. We're also going to have our first part of Racing Weekly, Racing Recap. We'll start at Cheltenham on Friday, that's just gone. There was one notable performance, I thought, that of Captain Morgs, Steve. He's a horse that's always promised to be quite useful. You could detect a little bit of frustration in connections that he hasn't shown what he did on Friday at Cheltenham previously.
Yeah, everything came together, didn't it? First time cheap pieces up to 3 miles for the first time. It was a really impressive performance for me. Won by 7 lengths and kind of looks one of the key contenders for the Potemps later in the season. I into 14-1 with Bet365 for the main race at the Cheltenham Festival. Travelled strongly into the race. Saw the trip out well. The trip obviously helped him. He's kind of going to be. It's going to be interesting to see how his campaign for the remainder of the year. If the Potemps is the main target, he's already qualified. It's going to be interesting to see what the handicapper does to him. Win by 7 lengths, you're going to get a fair hike in that. It's whether he is put away until the main event in March, or whether they just stride on with him. You've got a horse in form, and I'll briefly go on to it later when we go into the Ascot card. But these handicappers can make that extra step up into graded company. So it'll be interesting to see how his campaign for the remainder of the season.
It really is, because Steve makes the point that he's in form. Do you strike while the iron's hot? The other thing as well with him, just given the way he's raced so far, is can you count on him to do it again?
Yeah, cheap pieces first time. There was the barest of margins about this victory, was there? You know, Captain Morgs winning by 7 lengths and absolutely bolting it. Was given a lovely ride as well, I thought, from James Bowen, who has always spoken of the highest terms, isn't he, by 7 Barrows, and the people down there, they love him. He's found a bit of consistency this year. He's already been around Cheltenham as well, in a decent race behind Guide Your Dreams. So he has shown flashes of that ability and that brilliance. I thought that James did really well just to hold on to him, so he didn't want him to hit the front too soon. Good ground suited him ideally, 3 miles, Cheltenham. Given we're halfway through December, why would you go anywhere else, really? You'd probably just sit on him now, and you'd probably go up into the low 140s for that, you'd think. 7 length win, £7 or £8, you'd think. Yeah, 141, 142. Job done, isn't it?
His stable companion, speaking of highly regarded, Dusart, who I think Nicky Henderson spoke before the race saying this was the only option he had to start Dusart off this season. Did you take much encouragement from that run, Steve?
He travelled okay into it, just looked like a horse that needed his run, really. He'll go back over fences, according to Nicky Henderson. It was just a stepping stone. With these horses, they come with a big reputation. And if he wasn't sent off the price he was, would you have been disappointed with that as the first run? We're often kind of clouded by the SP that a horse goes off and what they've then done. But I think it was quite clear to anyone looking at the race that it was a prep run. It's whether you just risk putting your hand in your pocket to actually risk the fact that he's good enough on his return over to hurdles on his first run of the season to actually
it was quite easy back, wasn't he? 7 to 4, had a 9 to 4, and I think that interview with, I think it was Lydia on Racing TV, probably spoke volumes before the race, that there was just nowhere else that Nicky felt that he could run.
Cork yesterday provided some wonderful racing.
Yeah.
Obviously, the headline act was Energumen, who did what we all expected him to do. I mean, nothing we've learnt more about the horse other than he's fit and well and seemingly in great heart.
And stop the bookies cutting him quite much.
Tout ça change.
Yeah, beat 3 rivals, had it all his own way, jumped, galloped, missed one out in the straight a little bit. It was a bit sloppy, but other than that, it was a pretty blemish-free performance, wasn't it? But yeah, sliced in the market, now odds on. But when you look through that Champion Chase betting, there aren't many that you'd want to be siding with, other than him and Edwardstone.
No.
You know, Shishkin
16 to 1 bar the two, yeah, and that's Shishkin, as you rightly say.
He's 160 to run in the race, really, isn't he? Given the noises coming out of 7 Barrows.
Blue Lord, Nube Negra, each way bets at all?
Nube Negra, decent ground, yeah.
He's definitely going to be targeted there, isn't he? He's the obvious each way play. I like Blue Lord up in trip. I know he travels strongly into his race. Like, if he was in something like the King George, I think he kids people into thinking he's only a 2-miler with how he travels into the race, and he doesn't find much off the bridle when he hits the front. But if you've got Paul Townend on and he arrives at the right time, I think he'll travel strongly into those. I think he'd get further than 2.5 miles.
Ryanair, if Allaher doesn't show up.
Yeah, I know. I think Blue Lord's a horse that could have a big part to play at the festival in the Ryanair. The Mayor's Novice Chase, Impervious won. Apart from anything else about Impervious, great to see Colin Murphy with a potential top class horse.
Yeah, nice. She's obviously not been the easiest to train, has she? Really impressive performance. 3-length winner, now 6 to 1 second favourite for the Mayor's Chase at Cheltenham. 2 from 2 over fences, stayed on 1 at the finish. You'd have no concerns with her stepping up in trips to 2.5 miles at the festival. This looked, obviously, jumped well, travelled well. and looks a really exciting horse going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I echo all those points. And you know, lightly raced over fences, just the 2 starts, jumped well around Cork. The circuit time was extraordinary when you put it in comparison with Energumene. She was 18 lengths quicker on the circuit, and only marginally slower from the third last. So, you know, I know Energumene's probably geared down, but you know, pulled down and would have had to keep the revs up after missing 2 out down to the last. So it's not as if he's literally jogged round. So, you know, it's quite an extraordinary performance from her, really. And I think sort of 6 or 7 to 1 is she for?
Yeah, 6 to 1, as Steve saying. And the horse that she beat, Dino Blue, is a pretty useful horse as well. Who's also 60. He's also in the mare's chase, 16 to 1. So I think that's a race that we'll probably be reflecting on in time. Anything else from what we saw on the track at Cork on Sunday? I mean, there were other notable performances. What struck you most, Steve?
Yeah, I'll leave Hidden Valley Lake for Sam. I know, he's a big fan of his. Blood Destiny won by 5 lengths. Now 20 to 1 for the Triumph Hurdle with Bet365. That will give a really good encouragement to Gary Moore. He has the horse Beau Zenith, who beat Blood Destiny in France by 3.5 lengths. So I'm sure, they'll have been sat at home on Sunday thinking, we've got a good one in the stable here. Arctic Brazil, beat the favourite Mercury by 5.5 lengths. Received quotes for the Ballymore and the Albert Bartlett around 16s and 20s. They've been really patient with him. It's kind of rewarded connections. I know in the interview afterwards with Henry de Bromhead that he's had a few kind of issues and niggly bits. Been given plenty of time. Cost a big amount of money, and it's when you've spent that amount of money on a horse. A lot of connections want instant success, but they've been really patient with him, and hopefully that'll
some big money purchases were successful yesterday, which has been sort of the theme for a lot of the season. What about the ones that struck you most, Sam?
Yeah, I like the way Blood Destiny jumped. The overall time figure wasn't anything special. I have to step up quite markedly on that, but already Willie Mullins is accumulating quite a collection of juvenile hurdlers. Obviously got the favourite of Lossiemouth, and there's 1 or 2 others in there that look lively, so he can juggle the pack with those, you would imagine. I really liked Hidden Valley Lake. I thought it was quite an extraordinary performance, really. Looked to be going nowhere at the bottom of the straight, and then runs out an 8-length winner, beats a horse that previously won their previous 2 races very cosily. And the data, which perhaps we'll drill down in a little bit later on, was extraordinary. I think they've got a proper machine there. Okay,
well, we'll talk more about Hidden Valley Lake in just a moment. One really important topic that was covered yesterday was a post-race reaction from one of the de Bromhead winners, Henry de Bromhead, talking about Honeysuckle, suggested that the mare's hurdle is open and it's an option for her. He said he's got to find a race that she can win.
Yeah, his job was to find a race that she could win.
Yeah, which therefore meant, listening to it, you're then thinking, so you don't think she can win the Champion Hurdle? Is that how you read it, or?
Yes, and every single person looking at it, if you look at the oddschecker app afterwards, it's obviously the sea of blue. And you can understand why. It will just be disappointing. In this, you want to see how good Constitution Hill is.
Yeah.
And he'll have to put in some performance to give her £7 and be stamped a champion. I can completely understand if connections want to go that way, because you do want to win races at the Cheltenham Festival. But it will be slightly disappointing. It's a good race. The Mare's Hurdle is one of the races I'm probably most looking forward to.
That's the irony.
Well, it could be an amazing race.
At the expense of the
bit of ducking and diving going on, Rish.
At the expense of the Champion Hurdle, they've ducked and dived, and it's like dodgeball.
Yeah.
And they've ended up, boosting the Mare's Hurdle. And
what could you have? You could have Epatante in there.
Yeah.
Every chance, really, isn't there? Let's be honest,
yeah.
Epatante. Queensbrook.
Yeah.
Marie's Rock.
Yeah.
Echoes in Rain, massive
Echoes in
eye
Rain.
catcher
Yeah.
falling in the Hatton's Grace.
Everyone thought would nearly have won the Hatton's Grace. Not so sure myself, but yeah.
We're speaking here as racing fans, right? We're not, we understand why people. There's no need for them to have to explain to us they want their horse to win. I totally get that, but we are on the outside, and as racing fans, we want to see competition. And at the moment, didn't he shorten up yesterday, Constitution Hill, in the light of the
just trim, isn't it?
I mean,
she was unbeaten going into the Hatton's Grace. She has been regarded as one of the best champion hurdlers that we've had in recent times. She always underperforms on her first run of the season. They always leave
Especially
a bit to go
on
to.
very deep ground,
Yeah.
which it lagged it down all day.
And coming between 2 out and the last, you thought it was job done, didn't you? You thought she was just going to go away, and she's entitled to finish a little bit tired and in need of the run on her first run. She's not the first one, and I know you touched on it a kind of a week or so ago. She's not the first to Bromhead horse, not Allaho, a Plutard that obviously needs that first run of the season. So I'd crack on to the Irish Champion Hurdle, crack on to the Champion Hurdle and see how good he is.
Let's hope she bounces back in the Irish Champion Hurdle if she wins that.
We don't want to see any ducking and diving, do we, Rich?
No.
We want to be able to put a bit of context to Constitution Hill, don't we? I know State Man's in there, but the rest of the field, if you start looking down the Champion Hurdle list, all of a sudden, without honeysuckle, looks a bit thin.
Yeah,
a bit like my barnet.
So Constitution, thank you. I thought you meant mine for
No,
a minute,
mine.
But ours. Constitution Hill 1 to 3 with Bet365, State Man 5s, Honeysuckle 9s, Vauban 12. So Gerhard, who I think Ruby said on the weekend is almost certainly going novice chasing, is 25 to 1.
Well, we haven't seen Vauban yet.
We haven't seen Vauban, although again, reports are he's coming to the Boyle nicely.
Is he? Yeah.
Tiupu's 25s, Pied Piper 33s. I mean, I'm even tempted to think maybe I'd have a pound each way on Bob Ollinger at 50 to 1. Because what's going to run in it?
Tiupu's going to go stayers.
Yeah.
That's what they were looking to.
Yeah.
It does, it looks a thin old race, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
At the moment.
start of the season, the Champion Hurdle, Constitution Hill, Honeysuckle.
Yeah.
Wow. Just that
Evens
little
each
comment.
of 2.
That little comment that he made yesterday is just...
And he was quite enthusiastic about the mayor's race as well, wasn't he? It wasn't just, we have got the option of the mayor's race if we wanted to go that way. But it was, my job is to find a race you can win.
Yeah.
And it'll probably be a last race, wouldn't it? You'd think, if everything goes well in between, touch wood. So...
Okay. So we are,
disappointing.
again, another downbeat note.
Yeah.
We might not get
the mayor's
clash.
hurdle's the new Champion Hurdle.
Constitution Hill should go to Ireland and take her on there. That'd
be interesting.
And
It might do.
Then they'll know for certain whether to send Honeysuckle elsewhere or not.
But you can just see what Nicky's going to say, can't you? wins the Champion Hurdle. Why do we need to go to Ireland? We don't need to go to Sandown. Get the Cottonmore back out. Understandably so as well.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the personal decisions they're making, we understand. I think it's just as racing fans, we'd like to see a little bit more oomph with the clashes. But okay, that's a look back at what we've seen and heard in the last week. Next up, we're going to have a look back at the performances of the season so far in the minds of Sam Turner and Steve Ryder. So for this particular segment of the show, we have made it clear we don't want John Bon or Constitution Hill as, for example, the obvious one. So we're looking at something that's a little bit more offbeat. Doesn't have to be completely left field. But Sam and Steve have picked out 3 performances each from the season so far. Steve, I'll start with you. Your first one, please.
Yeah, we've spoken around things that we've heard. Barry Connell came out and said that we're likely not to see Marine Nationale until the Supreme. So he kind of slots into this segment quite nicely, really. I was really, really impressed with him. His win in the Royal Bond. Impressive in 2 bumpers as well, including over the well-regarded Demand Drive and Duvan.
Yeah.
Won as expected on his hurdling debut at Punchestown in October. But it was that Royal Bond win I was really, really impressed with. I know Connections were worried about the soft ground that day, which completely explains why they're going to miss out the winter ground and come back in the hope of some good ground in March. He was given such a confident ride by Michael Sullivan the other day. Won by a head, but the rider only went for him after the last.
And he bundled the last as well.
Yeah, I was really impressed with it. You've obviously got Facile Vega head in the market in the Supreme, but you can't be scared of one horse. He, no doubt to me, sets the standard on what any 2-mile novice hurdler has achieved so far this season. I probably wouldn't be in a rush to take the 8 to 1 that's available for the Supreme. He doesn't seem to be that kind of sexy horse on the day.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to get excited around Facile Vega and
Jet powered
as well for Nicky. They've got the kind of the sexy profile that punters will like to get to grips with on the day. But yeah, around 8 to 1, I think that's perfectly fine, and I'm looking forward to him in the Supreme.
The thing I love about him is his head carriage.
Yeah.
I've watched the replays over the weekend, watching him win that Royal Bond again, and his head, he stretches his head out. He wants to try so hard for the rider. That's a massive plus when you're coming up that hill at Cheltenham.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. It was a terrific performance, wasn't it? Not much to add to that.
Okay, so that's one of the 6. Sam, your first one, please.
Well, talking of head carriages, Protectorate after the last at Haydock.
Nice.
Really, I just love the way this lad goes about it nowadays. Really matured, hasn't he, in the last couple of years. He was a bit of a head banger when he first came on the scene with the Skeltons. Also talking to horses that we're probably not likely to see until March as well, unfortunately. Brilliant target trainers, obviously, the Skeltons. And his record when he's had at least a couple of 100 days off, second, first, and one of those defeats came by a head. He's better in a smaller field as well, just looking at his stats. He's yet to win in a field of 9 runners plus, which suggests that perhaps he gets lost a little bit in a big field handicap or a big field race. So would be better in a smaller field, but I think he's maturing as well, and I don't see any reason why he can't lay that ghost. He's had a second wind up as well, and looks a terrific horse now, who obviously goes very well fresh. He's, seems as though that's the way, a little bit undercooked rather than overcooked is the way to go with him. A bit like Nubi Negra, his stablemate. And obviously the stable are having a really vintage year, so I just want to ride that train with him, really. Obviously he's got Galopin de Champ to beat in the Gold Cup, but I think he's 12 to 1 at the moment, best price in the village. I think that's a bit of a tall price, really.
Okay. With Bet365, Galopin de Champ 9 to 4. The winner, Long Presse, 6 to 1. Protector at 8. But also, just worth mentioning on the Gold Cup, as we're talking about it, that news emerged over the weekend that at Plutar, there was a reason for the below par performance at Haydock, a travel-related sickness. So, with that in mind, clearly a very valid excuse for that poor run. At Plutar, 10 to 1 for the Gold Cup, having been, what was he earlier on in the season favourite before that Haydock run? 7 or 4, 2.
You've got a valid excuse, haven't you? If you're holding on to ante-post vouchers, you've got a horse that's going to go back there and try and, just repeat what he managed to do last year. I've never seen a horse's legs go that quick in a Gold Cup in all my days. That's the way that he strode majestically clear of some pretty decent horses.
I do think now, at one point of the season, there didn't look to be a great deal of value, but now there are a few horses of value in the Gold Cup. So something to bear in mind. Noble Yates, of course.
Yeah.
Even
talking
Allaho
of horses going, their legs
go
moving
fast.
faster than the back of everyone.
Okay, so one from Sam was Protector out. Your first was Marine Nationale. Second one, Sam.
Steve.
Steve.
So Rolneck was thrown you.
You both look so similar.
Cut.
Let's just keep rolling.
Keep rolling. Oh,
very good.
He's rescued it.
You touched through the champion hurdle market earlier.
Yeah.
You mentioned 7 or 8 horses.
I did,
And you didn't mention the horse who I actually quite like each way for the race. That's I Like to Move It. Obviously, the International, we've lost that. He was actually really interesting how the market was working. So you had I Like to Move It and Epatante relatively close to the market for that day. The performance that really obviously caught the eye for him was the Greatwood Hurdle win. I know it ended up being a little bit of a joke with the amount of hurdles that were actually jumped on the day. But you've said it yourself, you've gone through the market. It doesn't look a race full of quality and intended runners. You would imagine the Champion Hurdle Trial at Haydock, named after the new one, would be an obvious target for him en route. These 2 mile handicap hurdlers can make that extra step up, and 50 to 1 for the Champion Hurdle. I thought I Like to Move It.
There's a lot of sense in what Steve's saying there, because we're on about laughing about ducking and diving and whatever, but you've got a set of connections with I Like to Move It that ran the new one in the race every year, even when it looked patently obvious he couldn't win it, but they were like, we're going to run. We are just going. This is a race he should run in, and this is a race that I Like to Move It's going to run in. Now, 1 or 2 of those other also rans, you could definitely see those being redirected to other races. The county hurdle off top weight, or we're saving him for Aintree, or the mares are going to go in the mares race. So the race might continue to just revolve around that big name at the top of the list, Constitution Hill, and everybody else is going to get frightened off. So that 50 for a horse that's got so much proven Cheltenham form, from a set of connections that are game and genuine and want to have a go, I can see the sense behind that.
All right. So that's 2 for Steve so far.
Yeah.
1 for you, Sam.
Yeah.
What's your second one?
I don't think I'll trump that for value and sense, but Hidden Valley Lake, we've touched on his performance already. just drilling down in the data, I mean, he's related to Louis Vac Pouch and Mr. Hendricks, a good 3-milers. Also a 4-miler in there that the Shark trained. His win at Nace has been boosted. The runner-up's won since. Obviously, he won that Grade 3 contest at Cork on Sunday, beating Cool Survivor. He'd won his previous 2.
Yeah.
It was his speed across his hurdles in the last 2
really
hurdles. It was
responded when Rachel asked him.
Yeah, just lengthened and really quickened and made that ground look as if it was almost fast ground. On the circuit, the overall time was exceptional as well. So it wasn't as if they've dawdled around and then they've quickened. He's 35 lengths quicker than Meeting of the Waters. Neffin Beg, the last race on the card, he's 45 quicker than that. On the circuit, 45 lengths quicker than that. He's 60 lengths quicker than Arctic Brazil.
Jeez.
And 80 lengths quicker than Blood Destiny. And he's run 3 miles, and they were all running 2.5.
Yeah, those are serious numbers.
You know, he's opened up and won by 8. They might have gone a bit too early, and the race might have fallen apart a bit, but he still had to do the data, you know, crunch the data that he's done. So he's 8-1, isn't he, for the Albert Bartlett? You've obviously got a very nice horse of Willie's.
Grange Clare West is the 5-1 favourite. Hidden Valley Lake 8. American Mike 12. There's a bit of depth about this race as it looks at the moment. I mean, Hermes Allen is 14-1. 3-card Bragg 16s. There's some.
Well, I'd have him over American Mike any day of the week.
Well.
And I think they'll probably go to Clonmel in Feb, won't they, for that race that they won with Monolith. I think Manila Indo was second in that race as well, to Allaho. Yeah. So that looks a lovely stepping stone for him. But I think he's the real deal. I think he's a really good horse.
Okay, so 2-2.
2-2. Desmond.
Steve.
Yeah.
Your third, please.
Guy de Manil, I thought, was so eye-catching on his return in the Drinmore. Worthy of being the 11-4 favourite with Bet365 for the National Hunt Chase. Yeah. He has the perfect profile for the race. Interestingly, obviously for a Willie Mullins horse, he has more the profile of Run Wild Fred from last year as opposed to Statler, obviously being that second season novice. He obviously finished 3rd in the Irish National last year, so there's no doubts around him staying. Finished 3rd in the Brown Advisory behind Lon Presse, who obviously you are held in high regard. That was a perfect comeback. You know that he's going to be targeted at the race. Patrick Mullins and Willie Mullins has obviously won the race 3 times already, and a complete worthy favourite around 11-4 for the National Hunt Chase for me.
Yeah, get that.
Good call. At the market at the moment, Bet365, 11-4, Chemical Energy, 9-1, Classic Getaway, 12s. Ballygriffin Cottage, who actually put up, I thought, a decent performance. Was it Haydock that he won?
Yes.
Small field, but he's 14-1. And a few others. Jericho Rock is in there, 3-Stripe Life.
You can look through these Cheltenham markets and you can look at favourites and say they're too short for what they currently are, with the risk of backing them this far out. With him, the only way that he's going to go is his price is going to decrease. The more runners are going to divert to being...
It's likely to be a small field again, isn't it? You're going to... What did we get last year? 4, 5 or something
5
like that?
runners. And only 2 in really with a proper chance.
I think he'd have a light campaign as well, wouldn't he? Probably with more
towards
access the
spring,
spring, and probably go back for the Irish National. Yeah, you'd think, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Okay, so 3.
Bit of class, and certainly the way he was campaigned once or twice as well in very nice novice races last year. He was just sort of hunted round behind stablemates and stuff.
All right. Well, your 3 are done, Steve. Sam, your final.
This. When we're talking about performances that have really left a mark on you, you know, this isn't a John Bonn or a Constitution Hill or a Hidden Valley Lake, but Home by the Lee, when he won that Liz Mullen hurdle, I just thought it was such a exceptional performance, really. I know he's a bit leery, he's a bit way, you know, a bit of a lad, and I think he's taken a fair bit of training in his time as well. They've tried fences with him, that didn't work out. But the petrol that JJ Slevin must have used coming out of the back straight and sweeping wide for home. I know he only picked up Bob Ollinger, but with the dual stayers hurdle winner back behind him, 10 lengths behind him, Ashdale Bob, you know, reasonable yardsticks. He just kept finding all the way. He's got 6 or 7 lengths to find on the stayers hurdle field from last year because he ran in the race last year. Looked like he was going to drop out the back of the telly on that long run from the second last to the last, and then stayed on again up the hill, past a couple. I just think he looked a different type of horse last time at Navan, and that was only over 2.5 as well. I think if he just keeps thriving, 25 to 1 standout for the Stayers Hurdle with Bet365.
Yep.
You know, everybody's getting a year older. The Paisley Parks, the Champs, those sort of horses. You know, they've shown they know back number with what they produced at Newbury, but you know, we roll back to March. Surely the Stayers Hurdle winner's not going to get, Flooring Porter's not going to get a freebie again for the 3rd successive year at the head of affairs.
Isn't that what we said last time?
Yeah, I think it was. So I just think I know he's quirky, etc., but I think 25 to 1 for him is a big price. I think it's probably seen him at Leopardstown over Christmas. He's reported in good form. Yeah, I just thought he was an interesting one, really, at 25 to 1 in that Stayers Hurdle market.
Okay, so just to recap the 3 from Sam: Protectorat, Hidden Valley Lake, and Home by the Lee. And Steve's Marine Nationale, I Like to Move It, and Gaillard du Mesnil. Can I give one?
Go.
Yeah,
Can I give one?
As long as it's not long press.
It's not long press. Although, what a performance in the rehearsal. I mean, that was, if that did knock you right. It was amazing.
Qualifier.
Yeah, but no, it's Queen's Gamble.
Yeah.
She is something else. I'm certain she's a star. She was very impressive her first run when she won back in April, but she got plenty of weight from Mullenbeg that day. She did beat her by miles. And then she came back at the November meeting, and what she did there was, again, it reinforced the fact that she is something out of the ordinary. And it's the manner in which she goes about coming up that hill at Cheltenham. You both have watched enough racing over the years at Cheltenham to know that that hill is something else at Cheltenham. When you're asked to run and give your all, she devours that hill. She's 10 to 1 with Bet365 for the champion bumper, and I know that there's going to be a whole host of Irish horses. That Better Days Ahead is 8 to 1, King of Kingsfield 9 to 1. She's 10s, but with the mare's concession that she'll get, I can't see her not being involved in the finish of the race.
Wouldn't be a dry eye in the house either, would there?
No. I mean, you know, it's been obviously very difficult for Oliver Sherwood the last couple of years with all that he's had to go through. So to have a horse like her must be worth sticking at it. So good luck to all connections with Queen's Gamble. So that'll be my one against those. But hopefully in there we've given maybe, I don't know, 7 Cheltenham Festival winners by my calculation.
Take 6.
Well,
a 50 to 1 place will do.
Okay, it will do. To be honest,
I'm not sure Constitution Hill's going to get his colours lowered by I Like to Move It, but I do think there's a lot of merit in that tip. I think it's a really good tip.
Good shout indeed. Okay, so that's a look back. We've had a look back at what we saw last week. We've also had a look back of the best performances of the season so far. Time now for us to start looking ahead. Now, before we get into the weekend preview, just to let you know of Bet365's ITV racing offer. If you back a winner of 4 to 1 or more, place a bet on the next live ITV race and get your money back if it loses. That's money back up to £50 and applies to the first single bet placed. Bet restrictions and T's and C's apply. New and eligible customers only. Now, the first race we'll look at coming up at Ascot, fingers crossed, we said obviously that the meeting is on, is the Long Walk Hurdle. We talked about 2 of the horses, just in passing reference. Champ and Paisley Park, Steve, they served up a real treat at Newbury. Yeah, really interesting race, the long distance hurdle. A good race, but as a form, I'm happy to take it on, if I'm honest. They're both getting a little bit older. I know they pulled miles clear, but yeah, in this race, I'd be looking elsewhere. It's a really interesting race to preview. You've got a couple in there that are stepping up in trip as well, if they were to run in the likes of Goshen and Not So Sleepy. Proven 3-mile form, and I touched on it earlier, from handicaps, I think means a lot. Botox Hass, if he was to run, rather than running Goshen, would be my idea of the winner in this, to be honest. He's become really consistent. As a younger horse, he was rather inconsistent. It's amazing to think that he's still only 6. But with the rating 150, he's well deserving of a crack in this race. He showed a really, really good attitude to beat Getatonic at Haydock last time. In the old fixed brush hurdle. I was really impressed with that performance, and I wouldn't be scared of taking on Champ and Paisley Park at the top of the market. All right.
That was my way into it, really. Just because I think if we're previewing a race on a Monday, ahead of Saturday, you've got, probably 7 to 4, 9 to 4, those 2. And it's a bit of a flip of a coin which one of them wins if either of them does. There's not much between them. I can't really make a strong case for one over the other, so I'd rather look outside those and look at something at a much bigger price. And I sort of happened on Dash or Drasher. I mean, for me, the The major thing here would be 3 places, you know, and I'm sure some bookies will bet to 2 because it might cut up a little bit. There's a Elliott horse in there. Obviously, Gary Moore's got a couple. So there's every chance that we might get another small field. But if you can avail yourself of 3 places, and something like Dash or Drasher, who has probably got that, what's it called now? That race in February is his primary, the one that he beat Master Tommy Tucker in?
Ascot.
Yeah, is it the Ascot Chase? The Ascot Chase. Does what it says on the tin, doesn't it? He's got that probably his primary objective, but why not take him this race anyway? I mean, he looks in good nick this year. This is run on his home turf. His Ascot stats, I think he's 5 from 8 right-handed, 6 starts at Ascot, 4 wins. He's finished 3rd once and pulled up on the other occasion. Shown he's as good as ever. I mean, he ran behind Noble Yates last time, the second coming. So, you know, he's the type of horse for me that I would like to back at sort of 20 to 1, 3 places, or 16 to 1, 3 places if you could get that on the day.
Okay. If forced and Denny, I'm happy to watch this race, but I'd rather be with Paisley Park than Champ. He's obviously won the race before, and I just like the way, almost felt like he was ridden conservatively because it was his first run back. This is how he comes back and then brought into the race, and maybe if the button had been pressed fractionally, I don't think anyone did anything wrong, but he might have picked up Champ. But no strong view on that race.
Who do you think's better suited by good ground? Champ or Paisley Park?
Is it definitely going to be good? There is I was chatting to Steve before we started. There's a little bit of rain forecast as well at the end of the week.
Incredible scenes.
Well,
Yeah.
a combination of stuff. But I mean, if there is a bit of rain, who knows? I mean, but if it is good ground, what do you reckon?
I think it'll probably help Champ, if I'm honest. With Nick, Aidan Coleman deliberately was it Aidan? No, it was John Joe.
John Joe rode him, yeah.
Deliberately rode him away from Paisley Park. If they're in a battle head to head, you'd have your money on Paisley Park, wouldn't you? So the worse the ground, the more of a slog, the more of a battle. I think I'd be inclined to go with Paisley Park.
Yeah. Okay. Should we have a look at the Silver Cup, also on the same day?
Indeed.
Hopefully we get a decent sized feel for this, but just looking at some of the leading contenders, and Sam, Sporting John, 300 through 5. I mean, early thoughts on the race, Steve?
Well, you've got the 1-2 from the London Gold Cup. Al Power and Danny Kerwin both entered in there. Chamblou's an interesting entry as well. Obviously would have won the Charlie Hall in his reappearance last season in handicap
by some way.
Yeah,
he would have won that by some way, wouldn't he?
So yeah, back in handicap company, he could prove well handicap. Skelton's Saturday record has kind of said it all this season as well. The one that I liked at a big price, and I'm actually a bit surprised that he is as big as 20 to 1 with Bet365, is Fortescue for Henley Daly. I think a little bit of that in the ante-post market is because it would be backing up quickly from his latest run. But Henry Daly's having a good season so far this year. He beat Fiddler on the Roof in the Swinley Chase in February over this course and distance off a mark of 143. He runs here off only £1 higher, so you could definitely give him a shout at the weights. He gave Harry Nugent a great spin in the Beecher last time over the national fences. This is going to be a quick turnaround if he was to run here, but conditions should suit him. And I think 20 to 1 is a big price for him.
I think we touched on it a little bit when we were doing the Beecher Chase, that he was one of the few horses to finish off quite well in that race and come home quite strong. And I think we said that, you know, if he goes back to Ascot or a right-handed track, so that Kempton race that he was second in, I think was it 5-star Getaway. I think he is a quality chaser. I think he's definitely of interest. Don't know how quick he'd want the ground. I think he wouldn't mind a bit of rain ahead of the weekend.
He beat Fiddler on the Roof at in that race at Ascot. I mean, he's a good horse. I think that's a really good shout. I like him. Anything else to add to it?
If it was genuinely good ground, I think Our Power and Danny Kerwin, I think they're 2 horses that I definitely want to keep on side. Obviously, they fought at the finish of the race that Steve mentioned. I like Our Power going right-handed, and Danny Kerwin. I know he curls up a little bit, but I think the good ground, and I think he ran really well. I think they were sort of 9 and 10 to 1, the pair of them. I thought that was fair.
The 2 that Steve, I also like Chamblou. I mean, were he to turn up, clearly he goes well fresh, as he had the field completely strung out when Harry Skelton pressed the button.
A different postcode, wasn't he?
Sadly, came down in the Charlie Hall last season. So,
yes.
Yeah, 2 good shots, I think, there, Steve. And also on Saturday at Ascot, it's the big Premier Handicap Hurdle to close off the card. Again, there's a Skelton horse at the top of the market for that, in Picard, Hacker de Place, First Street, Highway 102, and then Steve and I were talking about a couple that ran in the race last year, Tritonic and Metier. First thoughts?
Tritonic would be the obvious one for me. Won the race last year from like 141. Is only £2 higher this year. Been kept fit on the flat. Beat Goshen at Goodwood in October by a neck. When we were talking around it, I'd had a look at the race without prices, and 16 to 1's available on offer with Bet365. That seems generous enough for me.
Yeah, I was astonished. And he's a definite runner. I've spoke to somebody connected with the horse this morning. Agreed. I mean, all the money's been for Picard, sort of 8s into 7 to 2. Understandable as well. The Skeltons often target this race. They've had good success in it before now, and obviously he looks a lightly raced horse that beat a nice horse, Hullenbach, at Chepstow. And off a mark of 130, I think they'll be looking to exploit that. So I can understand why he's gravitated towards the head of the market. Not a lot of interest for me at 7 to 2 though. First Street, if he reroutes here, he's already won one race off top weight this year at Newbury and clocked a good time in beating Grivatana. Had Teddy Blue back in third. I think he's a possible runner as well for the Gary Moore team. I think he can go quite well. But I like First Street. I think the good ground's fine for him. Right-handed, no problem. He beat Mengli Khan by 7 lengths at Kempton on good ground as well. So I think he's a big player. But Tritonic, 2 from 2 in over hurdles here. Won his novice here, won his race here last year. And if you watch that race back, he come there absolutely cruising. I think I put up Gary Claremont in that race, and he was swinging away at the bottom of the straight, and Tritonic left him for dead. So I think he's a major player. I think 16 to 1. I think it's a mad price, really. I think he ran really well here over a mile and a quarter on the flat. Finished 8 lengths behind Quick Thorn as well in a race at Royal Ascot on heavy ground. So he's got really good proven form. Goes very well right-handed as well. He had Metier, West Cork, Goshen all behind him in this race last year. I think 16s is very fair.
All right. Anything else on the Saturday? Brief look on the Friday. There are a couple of very interesting races. I mean, the Kennelgate Novices Hurdle, there are a couple of horses that have struck quite an impression so far. I mean, obviously Lucier's in there. There's a horse of Gary Moore's that bolted up called Quevega, who is a nephew of Quevega. And there are others in there that you can mention. Anything you like there?
Yeah, I had a wry smile. Yeah, Quevega is the one that I liked in this.
Okay.
Landed a gamble. First start for Gary Moore, well related. His dam is a half sister to Quevega. Won by 13 lengths at Goodwood. Would be really interesting up in class here. Like you said, it is full of those unexposed types. It's going to be a really interesting race, obviously, going forward. The standards probably, well, other than Lucia, would be set by Lallygag for Paul Nicholls. I actually thought he might be able to beat Grey Dawning at Exeter last time. Was just failed to concede a penalty that day, but they pulled a mile clear, the two of them. So that's a good form going forward. But Quevega just had a touch of star quality, and we know what those Quevega genes can install into them. So I thought Quevega was quite interesting.
I'm amazed you've deserted Hidalgo Bowie in the I like to move it colours. I've really taken with him at Worcester. Thought he was a little bit green, won by a wide margin. Be interested to see him run if he does line up. He looked to have that potential star quality. I know it's Worcester form to Ascot, and he might not have beaten great horses at the end of October, but I still thought it was a tremendous performance.
It's a really good race if the majority of those line up.
Let's hope we get it on for a start, and if we don't get it on Friday, let's hope we get it on
a big card on Sunday.
Well,
or Saturday, who knows?
That's talked of, isn't it?
Can I also mention the Novices Chase? Montmorel might run in that on Friday. Even if he does, there's a horse in there that I really like already as a chaser. It's Orson Risk, who I just love the way he jumps and he tries so hard. He got beaten last time out at Cheltenham, where he ran very, very well. Sorry, Newbury, where he ran. It was a good field, good competitive field, and I think he could have finished a little closer. Just leaned over a little bit left and got overtaken, but stuck to it really well. Got tired on the run-in. I like, there's some horses that strike a chord with you straight away. He's not Montmorel's class. Montmorel's the best horse in the race if he lines up. But Orson Risk is a horse that I'm probably going to follow for some time over fences. That's probably, sadly, not good news for Orson Risk. But
could you see something like the Grand Annual further down the line, bombing from the front? Or
yes,
that type
absolutely,
of race?
Just letting him fly along, because he's such a clean jumper, touch wood. He pings his fences and he gets away from the fences quite quickly.
Would Trip worry you a bit? 2-3? Do you think he you'll see that out?
I think that's probably ideal for him at Ascot. I'd say that would
Front runners venue.
I'd rather see him at that trip at Ascot personally. But I mean, Strawfan Jack's in the race again. He was behind him at Newbury.
And Thunder Rock.
Yeah.
I think Thunder Rock's a horse that's definitely going places, isn't he? I know the race fell apart a little bit for him last time, but still think he looked great round there.
Okay, we're closing off that section.
Yep.
Okay, so let's hope we get the card on somehow.
Yeah. What would be your best bet of the weekend?
It'd be 4 to skew at 20-1 if it gets to go ahead.
I'm glad you've left me Tritonic. I'll take that one.
I don't think there'll be much 16-1 left after recording.
No, probably not.
I did say to Steve before we came on, and he vouched for this. I would back the two Metier and Tritonic in the handicap hurdle.
You'd want some rain for Metier, wouldn't you?
But I do want some rain for Metier. But I did check the weather forecast, and they did say there was rain later in the week. So I'm hoping it's right, which would also mean that hopefully the meeting will be on.
Yeah.
And who wins the World Cup?
Are England not? Honestly,
I don't think we're in it anymore. I heard a rumour that we've gone out.
England and Portugal, they went out
Oh,
on the
really?
same day.
Oh, you nailed them to the floor then. Cheers. Thanks.
Thanks for that.
Nice work.
I don't know. Who do you think?
Jonah. Can you back Argentina? Stop them winning.
I should have backed France, shouldn't I?
Yeah.
Who wins?
Sadly, I think it's going to be France, which will make it even more bitter.
I don't know. I'd take it the other way, that we've been beaten by the world champions. Who wins it?
Who would you like to see win it? Is
Probably France.
Not
Really.
Morocco?
Well, Morocco would be a dream result, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But they're like one of those
And who would you least?
Fergus Wilson horses. They run every week, don't they? Those poor Moroccans. I mean, Christ, unbelievable.
Who would you least like to win it?
Um,
Is it
Yeah.
Argentina?
Yeah, I've got to fit
That was out of
Otamendi.
order.
I don't want to ever see Otamendi holding a World Cup in his hands, if I'm honest.
That penalty
They're
shootout.
Uruguay with Messi, aren't they? That's all they are.
Yeah.
Very upsetting watching them doing all that on.
But apparently the Dutch were walking back with whichever Argentinian penalty take, and they were in his ears.
Regardless, after
In his
the game's
ears.
over, you don't do that straight away, do you? Do you?
Well, if there's a lot of niggle in the game,
Maybe.
you might do.
Maybe it's.
I wouldn't like to see you do it, Rich. I think you'd have just wandered forward and shaken hands.
Yeah, well,
you?
that's how you end a game of cricket.
Yeah.
You know, despite the number of ducks that I made in my career, I still shook hands with people at the end.
Yeah.
Even though
It wasn't their fault you got out.
my favourite sledge whilst I ever played cricket was I made a duck whilst I was batting, and then I was on the boundary line fielding, and I was practicing my goal swing, and one of the guys standing on the boundary from the other team waiting to bat goes, "You don't look very good at that either."
Tremendous.
Yeah. So anyway.
On that bombshell.
On that bombshell, yes. Thank you very much, Steve, Sam. Steve, thanks for being on the show this
Thank you
week.
very much.
Before you go, actually, I should get your King George selection, because next week we've got King George chat coming up. Who do you like for the
Good
King
shout.
George?
I do like Brave Man's Game. I know it's a little bit boring.
It's all right.
Might not be.
Kempton definitely suits.
It's a Paul Nicholls horse in the King George.
Yeah.
You're not going to be that far
Yeah,
off.
I'm sorry.
All right. Okay. Don't say yours just
Nope.
yet. We're saving it for next week. Thank you very much, though, for joining us for this episode of Racing Weekly, brought to you by oddschecker in association with Bet365. Thanks to Sam and to Steve for joining me. As always, if you like what you've heard or seen on this or any of our previous episodes, then please leave us a kind review on Apple Podcasts or in the comments section on YouTube, and we'll ignore all the trolls on the YouTube comments. We will be back next week when we'll be looking ahead to the Christmas action in the company of Johnny Ward. But for now, from Sam, Steve, myself and the team here at Racing Weekly, bye-bye.